Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough of the new LFO module in Elastic Oscillator. So I did a video on this when it first came out, this really cool iPad and iPad. It will come to desktop as well, synth based on Mutable Instruments, Plaits, Eurorack module. So you can watch that video if you haven't. In this one I'm just going to focus on the LFO section, but you don't need to have watched that first video to enjoy this one, I think. So this video what I'll do is I'll really try to make it very clear how the LFO section works, because there are a few places here where I definitely see people getting tripped up and having a misunderstanding, and it definitely wasn't all clear to me until I really took the time to go in and make sure it was clear. But once you do understand it, it is pretty easy, and it's very powerful, and it's very fun. So, it comes also with a whole bunch of presets and in a bank called LFO Update, which is nice. So the update, you just get one LFO, in the update, and then if you want to get all 4 LFOs and the LFO mix page, which is really, what's interesting, I would say, to be honest, then you pay $4 for the in-app purchase if you want. I do think it's worth it if you like the synth and if you like modulation and sound design. So I'm going to explain it very clearly, and we'll run through a few presets later maybe. So here's a really simple example I made, and keep things very clean and easy to explain to the greatest extent possible. So, if we look over here, you can see I've got the LFO tab selected. Here, LFO1 is selected. Here we can see the waveform for LFO1. We can even see its phase, right? The little black bit that shows where it is in the waveform. And we can play around here. So movements on the y-axis will change the rate, and on the x-axis we're changing the LFO shape. Sine wave, triangle, upwards ramp, downwards ramp, square, and sample and hold. Random, basically. Okay, now let me just reset that the way it was. Very important to understand, everybody. These controls over here are also connected to each LFO. So every time I press here, like now we're seeing the settings for LFO2, which is off. That's it on. Okay, so we toggle on and off up here. These are also the settings for LFO2. Here, these are the settings for LFO3. These are the settings for LFO4. What's really important to understand, and where I've seen some people get lost, is you might think that these knobs are also local to each LFO, but they're not at all. These are global, right? That could be made a bit clearer, I think, in the UI, to be honest. So these are global. So basically, if we look at this patch here, what's being modulated is the frequency amount and the timbre amount, and both of them quite a small amount, right? Sometimes definitely less is more, right? That's what it's like, very hardcore. I don't want that. Let me just put it back. I wish this had undo and redo buttons. Every app should have them, I think. So, yeah, so here, this just means that the whole LFO section can modulate frequency and timbre. These things are not being modulated, right? But now, how they actually get modulated depends on a few things. It depends which LFOs are turned on, right? So here I've just got LFO1 and LFO4 on. So that's the first thing it's going to depend on. Second thing is going to depend where these little icons are. So this is the icon connected to timbre amount. This is the icon connected to frequency amount, and you can see when I tap it, it is lit up here and here, right? Which is nice. I like that aspect. So we can change the sound in a few different ways. So the first way, obviously, is change the shapes and speeds and so on of the LFOs, right? And by the way, we can also record changes there, right? Using the inbuilt automation system, which I talked about in my first video, but it's pretty clear anyway how to use that. I just want to go back to what we had before though right now. So that's one way we can change the sound, right? But another very important way is playing with their locations here in this mix page. So let's explain that. So if I drag both of these down here, now these are just being modulated pretty much 100%. If you bring it right down to the corner, it's 100% by LFO4. If I put this one here, let's say, then now timbre amount is 50-50 between LFO1 and LFO4. This one is still 100% LFO4. Now they're both being totally modulated by LFO1. Now it's 50-50. Now if I bring in LFO2 and 3, is kind of 25% influence from each LFO, right? That's the basic way that works. If you turn a knob down to 0 here, its icon should disappear, but that seems like a bug because look, they're not disappearing there. But they're still not influencing the sound, but yeah, those shouldn't be there right now. I've mentioned that bug to the developer, that'll be fixed. Let's explain one more thing about the LFO. So let's just go to the init patch. Okay. And so now we've just got something very simple. Let's put it on this wave shaping one, let's say. And let me play around until I get a cool waveform here. Okay, let's leave it at that. So, a couple of things that I didn't explain yet about the LFO. So every LFO, first of all, let's just look at mix here. So we've just got LFO1 on. Let's leave it for now with just LFO1 on, okay. And let's dial in something which LFO1 is going to modulate. So there, morph amount, that's nice. Oops, I still had recording on, let me turn it off. Okay. So, fade. Let's look at fade. So we got sync and unsynced options, right? All our dotteds and triplets and normal values and so on. Here, unsynced. Fade. Let's look at fade. So I'm gonna just bypass this and play this with the keyboard directly. Okay. So do you see here when I play a note? Let's just look at what's happening. Do you see how we've even got an animation here, which is really sweet? Every time I play a note, it's going to take a while for the LFO to fully kick in. So it's like a ramp from 0 up to whatever its value is. So that's the fade knob. That's really nice. Then we have phase. So I've also got retrigger on at the moment, by the way. So every time I play a note, the LFO is going to go back to its starting point. So this is where we change the starting point. So if I have this down here, its starting point will be right there at the start of the waveform. See when I, whoops, see when I press play? Hang on. Or sorry, when I press note, every time I press a note, you can see that it jumps back and starts from the beginning. If I change phase, then now when I press a note, you can see that it's basically starting from this position. Okay. Then down here we have retrig. We talked about that already. And one shot. So then that's just like an envelope. It's not looping. And free mode, it's just looping and its phase will not be reset when I play a new note, unlike retrigger mode. Right? So let's look at a few presets from the LFO update bank and just see what's going on and have a little play with them. Okay, so let's just latch this note. Turn the volume up a little bit. First thing, if you're trying to figure out the patches, go to the mix view first, right? So you'll see a few really important things there. First thing, you'll see which LFOs are on or off, you know, and you got a nice overview of everything. And then you'll also see where these different things are, so you can see which LFOs they're being multiplied by. Or sorry, modulated by. And it's also just a nice way to get a little overview of the speed of the LFOs, yeah? And I think these are running a little bit fast for me, maybe. So I'm just going to go in and, whoops, clear automation, yes. Okay. So I'm just going to go in and bring those speeds down a little bit. Yeah, that's more my speed there, I must say. Lovely. So, play around with where these are. So now these are all being modulated by LFO3. Sample and hold oscillator. That's pretty cool. I say they're all being heavily modulated by that, but especially the ones over in this edge will be getting some influence from LFO4. But it's going very, and LFO1, and maybe a slight extent to LFO2. Let's speed up LFO4. Yeah. So let's change that, entirely. Let's have that as a sine wave instead. And then, you could dial in exactly what things will be modulated. Now you see here, now look, those are disappearing as they should. That's how it's supposed to be, but it seems a little bit buggy, as I showed you earlier. Unless that was human error, but I don't think so. Anyway, it'll definitely be fixed. So, that's really enjoyable to play along with. Let's bring in a bit of reverb, yeah. Oh, that's so much nicer, yeah. Oh, nice, yeah. maybe next one. Didgeridoo. Pretty cool. So again, you know, very easy to change things up quickly. LFO 1. Slow it down. Play around with the mix a little bit again. Let's just slow all of those down. Nice. Just a little bit of movement. Slightly more subtle one. It's a hardcore one. I love that the preset switching in this app is very smooth. Very few apps do that well. This is one of them. I wish that every app would do that. As well as undo and redo, which this doesn't have, unfortunately. And I really wish it did. Here you can see a lot of re-triggering, which is happening a lot because the ARP is on and it's set to a fairly fast rate, and hold is on. Do remember that re-trigger is, you know, per LFO. It's easy to forget that and think that that's a global control. But of course, I am glad that it's not a global control. It's absolutely needed for that to be per LFO. Oh, there was nothing being modulated there. Hang on. There's only one LFO one. Okay, so I think you get the idea, guys, right? Don't need to go through many of those presets. Very powerful, cool little unique LFO, and it genuinely is unique. I don't know of anything else quite like this on iOS. But if there is, let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a great day or evening, whatever time zone you're in, folks. Take care.